Rogue Corps is finally here. And with it, we have so much to go over with, so let's waste no time and get straight into the meat of things. We have 5 classes into the game unique to their own role, meaning that you can't have duplicate classes anymore. Spotter ensures that no stone is unturned with his sonar scan, revealing nearby enemies and objectives. He can tag enemies with his darts to light them up and make them take guaranteed critical hits. Or he can choose to hit the ground to expose an area. As enemies walk into them, they'll have full crit chance. He also carries a spare ammo case in the situation that he needs to supply one of his teammates. Slicer has the highest mobility with an omnidirectional dash and an energy blade to cut his way through several hordes. He uses a shield as well to close the distance with ranged opponents or defend his teammates from an incoming barrage. Retcon can rewind herself to take advantage of the current situation, take damage in the current, and flash back to the past with not even a scratch. But she does struggle with anger management, so it's best to stay out of her way when she's pissed off. If everyone on her team goes down, including herself, she can get right back up with full armor and health 1 time per mission. Guardian keeps the spawn at bay with his stun gauntlets, and they can fire in a concussive barrage to keep enemies dazed, and his repulsion field pushes back the fiends when they're surrounding him. Being the main bastion of the team, he also comes equipped with an armor beacon to repair any broken armor up to the current max, but only half. Falconer comes with the assistance of her bird-like drone that can fire electric projectiles at enemies, stunning them and dealing damage. She can place down a zone as well, just like Guardian, but instead, it gives her allies electric damage on their weapons. Her drone can also be used to revive teammates from afar, and Falconer is essentially the taser of the team. Each class has 2 specific perk decks to them. Both decks give small buffs on top of the upgrades that you already get from the Expedite in-game, but play into what your class is capable of doing. Spotter, for example, has 2 decks as of current: Mobility and Big Crits, with Mobility playing into keeping your accuracy strong while on the move, and Big Crits playing into your critical hits doing more damage overall and hitting crits more often. Even though he has the facilities to warrant a crit boost on his enemies, these bio boosts allow for further amplification of his abilities during the run, making his current abilities even stronger. Some decks let you play more recklessly, like Retcon, taking damage intentionally and increasing melee damage to get more effect out of her time warp. Going on to the weapons of the game, there are currently 24 weapons in the game, and unlike DRG, they're not restricted to classes, meaning you can use weapons on anyone. And 14 of those weapons are coming back from Deep Rock. The rest are ones that are unique to Rogue Corps. When it comes to the weapons that are specific to Rogue Corps, I believe that the ideas that behind them are really good, and I like the direction and style that they took with these new weapons. One of the weapons that I really love is the Silverback. It's sleek, and it's the first ever rifle in the game that feels like it has a real kick to it, unlike the Deep Core when playing as Scout. But all the new weapons feel like they sit right at home, and when I got my hands on them, I didn't feel like they were alien to me. Their ideas weren't insane, they weren't vastly different from one another, but it felt like, yep, this is a gun that I would use if I was an employee at DRG. They don't feel different no matter what class you're playing. There's no specific weapon for one class. In the past, each weapon had to fill a role on the roster, which makes sense that these weapons fit more generalistic roles. They don't feel restricted, but the weapons that are still from DRG, like the minigun and the autocannon, for example, as those were 2 gunner weapons, they don't feel unnatural to be wielded by any class, especially the other weapons like the breach cutter and the other heavy weapons we have currently. So it's nice to have a different change of pace and be able to use those weapons more often than having to hop on gunner when you just want to mess around with the autocannon, for example. Getting into the real meat of things, we're going into the enemies. And honestly, the core spawn compared to what we have in Season 5 was definitely way more varied than what we're used to. When it came to DRG, we got our asses handed to us, as the only correspond was the correspond crawler, and he's already an enemy notorious for having strong armor. He was a tough bastard no matter what, and there would just be more if we kept killing him. But with the introduction of Rogue Core, we have seen so many new variants of the correspond, like the Creeper being the basic grunt, and other types like the Scorcher and the Clamorhead. Many other types of these enemies are completely different to what we know about the Glyphids. You can mistake these guys to be like a reskinned Glyphid, but they are completely different. They have way more mobility, way more strength, and they're definitely smarter, because some of the Glyphids that I've seen are not the brightest. Comparing these guys to the Glyphids is definitely the first mistake you could ever make if you are a returning player, as they're ruthless, and they want to make sure that the first encounter you have with them is your last. The Glyphids are terrified of them, and as well, if it couldn't get worse, the damn core spawn is making it difficult to see them again. I miss you, Steve. The core spawn do have one major difference compared to the Glyphids, and that is less overall armor. Despite what you might think about them being tough, that doesn't mean they have to be armored for them to be tough. And majority of the core spawn are not armored, unlike the bugs, which in turn made certain weapons that weren't that great with armored enemies in the past a lot stronger here, like the Warthog on the Stubby. But the armored enemies are still just as strong, they're just not as present anymore. When it comes to biomes in Rogue Core, the only new biome that exists is the new biome area that is located within the lower levels of each stage. But there are no real new biomes, and especially when it comes to the Ossuran Depths, it wasn't even included in this game. So, a lot of the areas in this game are going to look familiar. But, on the good side, there are new build pieces and infrastructure located within the caves that you can see. I really like the direction the team looked with seeing infrastructure in the caves, as it gave a real sense of what was going on in this area before the core spawn started wiping out the dwarves and making certain facilities go offline. When it comes to each environment within the game, there are no new biomes or anything, and especially with the Ossuran Depths, which were added recently in Season 6, they're not even present within the game either. So, what is really left? Well, in each area, now we have infrastructure and build pieces seen without the environment, which is a really good idea, and I like the take that they took on this. Seeing DRG infrastructure in the caves really gave it a sense of what was going on in this area before the core spawn started attacking. Each area also has a distinct core spawn related area deeper within each facility. Each facility has a certain amount of levels, with the shortest being 4 and the longest being 6. And it can really scale how long an operation can be, because each level can take a decent portion of your time if you're trying to gather everything. As you continue through the game, you will gain clearance levels to newer areas and events in-game. And eventually, you can unlock altered sites, which are similar to the modifiers you see in DRG, but the only difference really being that the modifiers are not standalone, and you can't get a mix of certain modifiers or maybe even duplicates. Modifiers are now set together, for example with half enemy health but double movement speed on enemies, or double enemy health but double the expedite. All these modifiers work together, and they can no longer stack and make a mission hellish or basically impossible if it's like Swarmageddon times 2. Sometimes it's good to mediate these modifiers and make sure that they don't get out of control. Important part to this whole thing is ascending characters, as it's just like in the original game where you need to promote to gain access to more stuff. When you ascend a character for the first time, you gain access to the Gauntlet, which is essentially this game's deep dives. And as of current, because the game is still a work in progress, is an arena mode where you must reach a kill quota to progress to the next area. And it will continue to get harder as you go, but the merit reward for doing the entire gauntlet is so worth it if you complete the whole thing. I am glad that they didn't take a similar diving aspect into this, because the deep dives, although being very good in the first game, I do like the idea of making it more kill based, as this was also something that they were trying to do with point extraction in the first game. So seeing them try something more kill-based again is pretty good, because I like the way the core spawn interact with weapons and such like that. As for the ramrod, things are going to be a lot more different than how it is on Space Rig 17. On the ramrod, you can still get beer and such, but if you're going to want it, you're going to need to work for it. And for this time around, you can't even buy it either. You're not going to be using merits or your own money. This introduces the small exercising mechanic minigames, which honestly are a pretty nice addition, and I like how they were added in. Although most of the minigames within Space Rig 17 were just there for you to use in case you got bored, now these minigames entice you to unlock the beers that we know from the first game, and they're basically used as the currency. The more you exercise, the more you have during that one section to buy beer. So you work out, you get beer, it's pretty simple. They also made it so that, in general, the ramrod is more maze-like. It's definitely more confusing to navigate as of now than Space Rig 17, as Space Rig 17 was never initially difficult to navigate. There wasn't really an area you could get lost in. But when you go down into the belly of the ramrod, for example, every single door and area kind of just feels like a maze, and it's a little bit difficult to find certain places, especially, for example, when you're trying to get that shower achievement. It took me a bit to even find the room where it was, and I apparently had skipped right past it when I was looking for it. So when you're trying to look for a room on the ramrod, there's a lot of details, but there is a lot of twists and turns that can get you confused. Game's current state, it makes sense that it's a little bit difficult to some, but it doesn't mean that it's in a bad state. The game is early access, and I understand why everyone sees that as just a label. Early access is such a label to most things that people would think that it gives developers the right to make their game bad on purpose. But I don't see Ghost Ship as one of those groups or teams that really try to make their game bad. This game, honestly, is releasing the same way DRG did, and it was pretty bad off of launch. But people liked it because of the situation of when it was released. So it got a lot of cushioning when it came out. But with Rocore now released, it's getting a lot of flack that seems improper for the type of game that it is, especially since there's many other games just like this, and Rocore really shouldn't be getting the flack that it's getting now. Oh, that doesn't mean that it entirely shouldn't. There are some parts of the game that I can understand where people might be getting the wrong idea. Things like the upgrades are intentionally meant to be restricted because you're not supposed to get free upgrades. Everyone cannot just pick the same upgrade and expect to instantly win the game, because that's not how this works. For example, there are some upgrades in this game that are definitely really strong, and if everyone just picked the same upgrade, like the magazine fire upgrade, then that would be pretty bad. You would just have an entire team of dwarves that can just all do incendiary damage, which, mind you, is a really strong debuff on its own. But regardless of all the negatives, I still think the game is great, even with the issues that it suffers now. The difficulty still feels tougher than ever, and I can appreciate them for making a game harder than DRG. The bugs were tough, and they definitely get a kick out of you, but the core spawn, they really bring the pain, and they're not afraid to bare their teeth whenever. Rockin' Stone Miners. for those still watching beyond this point in the video, there's no funny thing at the end, but it's more of a comment to you guys. I appreciate the time you've been taking to finish these videos fully, and I really appreciate everything you guys have done for my friends and family who continue to keep watching. Everything that I've learned so far and everything I know so far about editing has been put slowly into making stuff that I love, so I thank you a lot. As a whole, I am going to slow down with the larger videos, and I plan to release smaller videos just so that I could give myself more time in case something like this happens again where finals rolls out and my work in general just slows down as a whole. So again, thank you all so much, and I hope to see you all in the next one.